The planet Xylos was not known for its hospitality, nor its leniency. It was a world sculpted by logic, ruled by the Krill, an aquatic species of immense intellect and even more immense bureaucracy. Their cities, sprawling networks of bioluminescent coral and pressurized water tunnels, were testaments to their meticulous nature. Every structure serving a precise function, every citizen adhering to a strict schedule dictated by the Grand Algorithmic Council. Deviation was unacceptable. The Krill themselves were a sight to behold, or perhaps a sight to analyze. Imagine, if you will, a dolphin crossed with a particularly stern librarian. Sleek gray bodies, intelligent eyes magnified by intricate ocular implants, and perpetually pursed lips that seemed to disapprove of the very concept of spontaneity. Their language, a series of clicks, whistles, and precisely modulated water pulses, was designed for maximum efficiency, conveying complex information with minimal ambiguity. Emotions were considered a weakness, a liability in the pursuit of optimization, which is why the sudden, unannounced arrival of a human spaceship caused such consternation. It wasn't just the ship itself, a battered, jury-rigged vessel that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts scavenged from a galactic junkyard. It was the sheer audacity of an uninvited guest violating Xylos's airspace, bypassing their elaborate sensor grid with what could only be described as unluck. Protocols were immediately engaged, defense fleets mobilized. The Grand Algorithmic Council convened an emergency session, their collective anxiety manifesting as a slight increase in the salinity of the city's water supply. The ship, after a rather clumsy descent, finally settled in a designated quarantine zone, a barren rocky plateau far from any Krill habitation. A hatch hissed open, releasing a cloud of Earth air. Then, he emerged. His name, according to the garbled transmission they managed to intercept, was Dave. Dave was, to put it mildly, an anomaly. He was tall, gangly, and clad in what appeared to be faded denim overalls and a t-shirt featuring a picture of a cat playing a keyboard. His hair was a chaotic mess, his smile disarmingly goofy, and his general demeanor suggested he was either incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or, most likely, a combination of both. He squinted at the alien landscape, scratched his head, and then, in a voice that echoed strangely in the thin atmosphere, said, "Well, this is different." The Krill watched him through their surveillance drones, their optical implants whirring, as they struggled to categorize him. His movements were erratic, his expressions unpredictable, and his very existence seemed to defy the rigid logic that governed their world. He didn't seem to grasp the gravity of his situation, the potential consequences of his intrusion. He just wandered around, poking at rocks, whistling a tuneless melody, and generally acting as if he were on a Sunday afternoon stroll through a particularly desolate park. The Grand Algorithmic Council debated. Was he a spy? An advanced scout for an invading force? A biological weapon designed to spread chaos and disrupt their meticulously planned society? The possibilities were endless and equally disturbing. One thing was certain. Dave was a problem. A very human problem. And the Krill, for all their intellect and sophistication, had absolutely no idea what to do with him. His presence was a glitch in the system, a variable they couldn't compute, a splash of vibrant, unpredictable color on the monochrome canvas of Xylos. The Krill prepared for first contact, bracing themselves for the inevitable disruption he would bring. Little did they know, Dave wasn't planning an invasion, a revolution, or even a mildly disruptive picnic. He was just thirsty, and he'd heard rumors about the quality of Xylosian lubricant, the kind used for their machinery. Apparently, it had electrolytes. The first indication that Dave wasn't quite grasping the Xylosian way of life came during his initial orientation. A delegation of Krill, clad in their most formal hydro suits, and led by Grand Overseer Krill 7, a particularly humorless specimen, attempted to explain the planet's customs, regulations, and acceptable forms of greeting. Dave, meanwhile, was busy trying to balance a small rock on his nose. Krill 7, through a translator drone that emitted a series of monotone clicks and whistles, stated, "You are required to demonstrate immediate understanding and adherence to Xylosian Planetary Directive 749, subsection C, regarding interspecies communication protocols." Dave, after several failed attempts to balance the rock, looked up with a grin. Directive 749 sub C, huh? Is that the one about not wearing white after the autumnal equinox? The Krill exchanged confused glances. There was no such directive. Planetary Directive 749 subsection C dealt with the proper disposal of biowaste in designated containment units. Krill 7, maintaining its composure with the discipline of a seasoned bureaucrat, corrected him. "You are mistaken. Directive 749 subsection C pertains to..." Dave cut him off with a wave of his hand. Yeah, bio-waste. Got it. So, where's the bathroom?" The Krill delegation was momentarily stunned. The concept of a bathroom, a designated area for personal functions, was considered highly inefficient and, frankly, rather disgusting. The Krill utilized a sophisticated internal recycling system that eliminated the need for such primitive facilities. Krill 7, after a moment of stunned silence, replied, "Such amenities are not standard on Xylos. Our biological processes are far more streamlined." Dave blinked. "Streamlined, huh? So, like, you guys just hold it in? That sounds uncomfortable." Another incident occurred during Dave's tour of a Krillian hydroprocessing plant. The Krill, proud of their technological prowess, were eager to showcase the facility's state-of-the-art filtration system. They explained in excruciating detail the complex process by which they purified and recycled their water supply. Dave listened patiently, nodding occasionally until they reached the main control panel, a vast array of glowing buttons and intricate displays. He stared at the panel for a moment, then turned to Krill 7 with a mischievous glint in his eye. "So this is where you guys make the bubbly water?" Krill 7 tilted its head, a gesture that on a krill was the equivalent of a human facepalm. "Bubbly water? I do not understand. This facility is crucial for maintaining the purity and sustainability of our..." Dave, completely ignoring him, reached out and pressed a large red button labeled "Emergency Release." The plant shuddered. Alarms blared. A massive geyser of purified water erupted from the roof, showering the surrounding area in a refreshing, if somewhat unexpected, downpour. The Krill panicked, their carefully maintained schedules thrown into disarray. Krill 7, sputtering and dripping wet, turned to Dave with a look of utter bewilderment. What have you done?" Dave, grinning sheepishly, shrugged. "Just thought you guys could use a little excitement." As Dave continued his accidental campaign of cultural disruption, the Krill became increasingly perplexed. They consulted their ancient texts, analyzed his every action, and even attempted to simulate his behavior in complex computer models. Nothing made sense. His disregard for their rules, his casual attitude towards their technology, his inexplicable obsession with bubbly water, it all defied logic. The Grand Algorithmic Council, in a rare display of collective frustration, considered drastic measures. Perhaps Dave was a threat after all. Perhaps he needed to be neutralized. But something held them back. A nagging sense that despite his apparent idiocy, there was something different about him. Something that they, in all their logical perfection, were missing. The Krill, now thoroughly unnerved, initiated Observation Protocol Zeta 9, a discreet but comprehensive surveillance operation. Every aspect of Dave's existence was meticulously documented. His sleeping habits, apparently he snored, a phenomenon the Krill found both baffling and slightly disturbing. His dietary preferences, he seemed to subsist largely on nutrient, paste in the occasional purloined energy bar, and his recreational activities. These primarily consisted of staring at the Xylosian sky, making strange noises that resembled whistling, and attempting to skip rocks across the surface of the hydro lake. Their hyperlogical minds, accustomed to processing vast quantities of data with ruthless efficiency, struggled to find any discernible pattern in Dave's behavior. He seemed to operate on a completely different set of parameters, a set that was frankly illogical. Was he a spy? A saboteur? Or simply insane? The Krillian High Command convened an emergency session to debate these very questions, their monotone clicks and whistles echoing with a rare undercurrent of anxiety. Amidst this growing suspicion, Dave developed a peculiar interest in the Great Harmonizer, a colossal structure located deep within the Krillian capital. This device, resembling a cross between a cathedral and a hydroelectric dam, was the cornerstone of Xylosian society. It was said to regulate the planet's atmospheric pressure, control the ebb and flow of the hydro lakes, and, most importantly, maintain the delicate balance of Krillian emotions, ensuring a harmonious, conflict-free existence. The Krill viewed the Harmonizer with a reverence bordering on religious devotion. It was the physical manifestation of their collective consciousness, a symbol of their unwavering commitment to order and efficiency. Access to the Harmonizer was strictly controlled, requiring a complex series of biometric scans, security clearances, and ritualistic prostrations. Unauthorized entry was punishable by, well, let's just say it involved a lot of paperwork and mandatory re-education seminars. Dave, of course, seemed blissfully unaware of the Harmonizer's significance or the security measures surrounding it. He would often wander near the structure's perimeter, gazing up at its imposing facade with an expression that the Krill could only describe as bemused. He'd ask seemingly innocent questions. So what's that big thing do exactly? Or does it have an on-off switch? These inquiries, delivered with his characteristic lack of gravitas, sent shivers down the spines of the Krill. Guards stationed nearby. They reported his every utterance to High Command, fueling their growing paranoia. The human was clearly up to something. Unfazed by the Krill's watchful eyes, Dave began his exploration of the Great Harmonizer. He'd saunter around its base, hands casually stuffed in his pockets, whistling a tuneless melody that grated on the Krillian guard's auditory sensors. He'd tap on the massive support struts, listening to the resonant hum with a curious tilt of his head. It was as if he were inspecting a used car rather than a device of planetary importance. One day, he produced a small metallic object from his pocket, a multi-tool as the Krill would later learn. He proceeded to fiddle with a panel near the base of the Harmonizer, a panel that was clearly marked with numerous warning symbols, in Krillian script. The guards, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and disbelief, could only watch as Dave nonchalantly unscrewed the panel and peered inside. Sparks flew. Alarms blared, a cacophony of klaxons that resonated throughout the Krillian capital. The guards finally snapped out of their stupor, converging on Dave with their energy weapons drawn. "Halt, human. You are in violation of 17 Krillian statutes. Cease your unauthorized tampering immediately." They screeched in unison, their voices amplified by their exoskeletal suits. Dave, startled by the sudden commotion, jumped back, dropping his multi-tool with a clatter. "Whoa, hey, hold your plasma cannons," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I was just, trying to figure out how this thing works. No harm intended, I promise." He offered a disarming grin, but the Krill remained unconvinced. Their multifaceted eyes narrowed, their weapons still trained on the human. But it wasn't malice that drove Dave. It was a tinkering spirit, a drive to understand how things worked by taking them apart and, hopefully, putting them back together. The Krill, with their rigid adherence to procedure and their fear of deviation, couldn't comprehend such a concept. To them, the Harmonizer was a sacred artifact, not a puzzle to be solved. Unbeknownst to the Krill, Dave's seemingly random tinkering was about to have unforeseen consequences. He'd inadvertently bypassed a crucial safety mechanism, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge the very foundations of their orderly society. The Harmonizer, the symbol of their unwavering control, was about to be harmonized in a way they never expected. The Krill, their patience finally exhausted, formed a semicircle around Dave. Commander Zorg, his carapace gleaming under the harsh artificial light, stepped forward. "Human," he boomed, his voice amplified and distorted by his vocoder. "Your Actions are illogical. Explain yourself. What is your purpose in tampering with the Great Harmonizer? Dave, looking genuinely confused, scratched his head. Tampering? I was just curious, like, what makes it tick? He gestured vaguely at the open panel, revealing a mess of wires, tubes, and blinking lights. It looked kind of like, well, back on Earth we had these things called pinball machines. Zorg tilted his head, a gesture that on a Krill was the equivalent of a human facepalm. Pinball? Machines? Are these devices of war? Weapons of mass? Amusement? The last word dripped with disdain. Nah, Dave chuckled. They're like, for fun. You put in a coin, pull back a spring-loaded plunger, and launch a metal ball. It bounces around, hits targets, makes noises. Pure, unadulterated, well, pointlessness, really. A wave of murmurs rippled through the Krillian ranks. Pointlessness? Such a concept was alien to their very being. Every action, every decision was carefully calculated, weighed, and executed with maximum efficiency. Zorg, regaining his composure, pressed on. Human, we have detected fluctuations in the harmonizer's energy output. Your pinball modifications are destabilizing the planetary harmony. Prepare for immediate re-education. He raised his energy weapon, the barrel glowing with menacing blue light. Dave gulped, but a strange grin slowly spread across his face. Wait. Before you, re-educate me, let me just show you something. He reached inside the open panel and fiddled with a few more wires. Suddenly, the harmonizer, instead of emitting its usual low hum, began to play a jaunty, upbeat tune. Colored lights pulsed in rhythm, and a cascade of what appeared to be bubbles floated from the top of the machine. The Krill stared in stunned silence. The great harmonizer was a cosmic bubble machine? Dave threw his arms wide, a proud inventor displaying his creation. Ta-da! I fixed it. Turns out this great harmonizer isn't some planet-stabilizing doohickey. It's a galactic relaxation station. A sophisticated alien soda fountain, if you will. Check it out. He grabbed one of the floating bubbles, popped it, and licked his finger. Lime-flavored. Pretty neat, huh? The Krill were speechless. Commander Zorg lowered his weapon, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. Soda. Fountain? He croaked, the word sounding utterly foreign in his vocoder. But the prophecies, the ancient texts, they spoke of the great harmonizer, the key to planetary equilibrium. Dave shrugged, popping another bubble. Yeah, well, maybe the Krillian equivalent of Nostradamus had a bit too much fermented kelp that day. Look, I'm no expert, but this thing's clearly designed for dispensing fizzy beverages and providing a light show. Relax, guys. Have a space cola. Chaos erupted. Some Krill recoiled in horror, their rigid worldview shattered. Others, driven by a primal urge they didn't understand, tentatively reached out to touch the floating bubbles. A few brave souls even dared to taste them, their carapaces shimmering with a mixture of fear and delight. Commander Zorg, witnessing the utter collapse of Krillian decorum, felt a strange sensation in his chest. Was this amusement? He watched as one of his elite guards, a towering specimen named Glar, chased after a particularly large, grape-flavored bubble giggling like a hatchling. The sight was both horrifying and strangely liberating. Dave, meanwhile, had located a hidden compartment and was now expertly mixing different flavors, creating bizarre and colorful concoctions. All right, who wants a nebula berry blast with a hint of quasar lime? On the house, he announced, holding up a bubbling glass of radioactive green liquid. The Krillian Empire, built on order, discipline, and unwavering adherence to tradition, was being brought to its knees by a human, a soda fountain, and a shared love of sugary carbonated beverages. The universe, it seemed, had a rather twisted sense of humor. And Dave? He was just happy to be here, serving up cosmic cocktails and watching the galaxy go a little bit fizzy. The Krillian High Council convened a week later, the holographic table shimmering with the weight of their collective bewilderment. Reports flooded in from every sector. Krill were abandoning their posts to hold impromptu soda-tasting parties. Military drills were being replaced by bubble-blowing contests. The sacred texts were being rewritten to include recipes for the perfect Space Cola. Commander Zorg, still reeling from the revelation, stood before the council, attempting to explain the inexplicable. The human, he called it a soda fountain, he stammered. It dispenses flavored liquids and bubbles. The Grand Overseer, his bioluminescent eyes narrowed, spoke with a voice like grinding glaciers. And this soda fountain, it has disrupted the very fabric of our society, our millennia-old traditions, our unwavering devotion to the great harmonizer. Zorg hung his head. Yes, Grand Overseer, it appears so. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought. He also invented a new flavor. Says it tastes like freedom. Unbeknownst to the Krill, Dave was already hard at work on his next project, converting the Krillian warship into a giant mobile disco. He'd managed to rewire the laser cannons to project swirling patterns of light, and the torpedo bays were being repurposed as dance floors. His reasoning? If you can't beat 'em, boogie with 'em. And so, the Krillian Empire underwent a transformation, from a rigid, militaristic society to a slightly less rigid, slightly more sugar-addicted society, with a penchant for brightly colored drinks and questionable dance moves. The universe, it seemed, was a little bit sweeter, a little bit sillier, and a whole lot more fizzy, thanks to one human and his unwavering belief in the power of a good soda. As for Dave, he was last seen teaching Commander Zorg the Macarena while sipping a Nebula Berry Blast. The fate of the galaxy, it appeared, rested on the slender shoulders of a man who just really liked bubbles.